In the 7th week, we started with game playing. We looked at some of the issues of game playing, the history, checkers program. We looked at what game trees are, the mini and maxi levels of game playing, and static evaluation. We did talked about static evaluation functions and all that in that particular week. After that, we had a break for 1 week. We had exams. We discussed about whatever we covered during that session, and then we began with the 8th week, and we continued from where we left. We started talking about Minimax algorithm. We've implemented that Minimax algorithm in this particular week. We talked about how alpha beta cutoffs are added to Minimax algorithm. We've also looked at some of the other alternatives of Minimax, and how one can even refine the basic Minimax process. The next week, the 10th week, we started with knowledge representation schemes. We started with propositional logic, then we moved on to predicate logic. We looked at some of the issues related to predicate logic, but then we also found that even during that, even with those limitations, a very, very elegant and powerful method of knowledge representation and inferring from it. The next module, 11th module, we began with resolution, which is again a very good method of knowledge representation. Not only knowledge representation, but inferring from it is a simpler way of doing it and easier to code. We looked at Bayes theorem and certainty factors in that particular week. The 12th week, we began with our discussion on uncertain membership of a class. We introduced fuzzy logic there. We looked at conceptual dependency. We introduced conceptual dependency, then went into detail of how what are the rules of doing that and how a statement can be represented, and at the end we talked about some of these shortcomings of CD. The next week, the 13th week, we actually proposed a solution which can solve at least one of the shortcomings of CD, and called scripts, which addresses the problem of a single statement representing an entire scenario. In the very week, we introduced expert systems. We provided what are the components of expert systems, what things entailed in the expert system, what requires which type of problems demand expert solution, and all that. We also looked at different components like knowledge representation scheme, inference, explanation system, the interface. So all that we discussed in that particular week. On the on the 14th or the final week, we started with 2 modules on how one can develop an expert system, what are the steps involved, what are the complexities involved, and what kind of questions one would ask during the development process. So which basically determines whether this problem is really suited for expert system solution or not, and if it is suited, is absolutely fine. If it is not suited, obviously whether you should be able to solve it using conventional method or you should solve that thing using a manual method. And in the later part of that particular week, we also have seen machine learning, which is also a very, very critical component of any AI system on many conventional systems today. And then in the final week, we again had a discussion forum. We discussed a few things about our course. We got the answers of some of our queries, and we've had a final exam on that module. So with that note, I congratulate you all once again on completion of this course, and thank you all for patiently listening to my conclusion speech. Thank you all.